Talking about rectangles and parallelograms. We should all know, or think we know, what a rectangle is. We've talked about a parallelogram. So today we're going to be talking about the attributes of a parallelogram. We're going to start there first. Alright, what are the attributes, the rules of a parallelogram? If you don't remember, you have a math notebook with knowledge in there. Turn back. Lily, what's one rule of a parallelogram?
Polygon.
Okay, so a parallelogram has to be a polygon, first and foremost. Lily, what does that mean if a shape is a polygon? No. What does it mean if a shape is a polygon? What does that actually mean? Ashley, what does that mean? It has no holes and it has straight sides. Our parallelogram has no holes and straight sides. What's another rule of our parallelogram, Aiden? It has two sets or two pairs of parallel sides. What's that word parallel mean? We talked about parallel on Monday. We drew some examples of parallel. What does parallel mean? Kylie?
There's lines that are side by side and that they will never touch. They can just keep going on and on and on.
Awesome. So we can make parallel sides with our arms. Show me parallel sides with your arms. So I see going up and down. Those are parallel. They go on and on forever and ever. They won't touch. I see top and bottom. That will work. Ooh, I see some diagonal. As long as it's not pointing like this, it's a true diagonal.
This is diagonal,
but they can't touch. They can go any direction as long as they never ever run into each other. They actually stay the same distance apart. So if I look here, the distance between my elbows is the same length as the distance between my fingers.
when it's like this.
It's the same, yep. So my distance in between my lines is still staying the same. We got another rule for a parallelogram. There's one more. There's one more. If you don't know, or you're not raising your hand, you should probably be looking in your math notebook. Sit up, please.
Oh,
Thank you. Grayson, what's the name of a shape that has four sides and four angles? Go ahead, Grayson. It's a long one. Kylie, do you remember? Quadrilateral. That prefix quad is a hint because quad means four. So a quadrilateral is a shape with four sides and four angles. So just to review, parallelogram. Can I call, sit up please, can I call a parallelogram a polygon? Is that a correct name?
yeah. Yes.
Yes. Is it the best name?
No.
No, but it's still right. If I say, hey person, is that true? Is that a real name?
Yeah.
Yes, but it's not the best name. Could I call a parallelogram a quadrilateral?
Yeah.
Is that a correct name?
Yes.
Correct
Oh,
name.
correct.
That is correct, but is it the best name? No. So we're going to look at some other ways to determine shapes. We're going to watch a little video on attributes just as a refresher. And then we're going to talk about rectangles, because rectangles and parallelograms are similar, but there are a few differences.
Look at the shapes below. Do these shapes have anything in common? In this lesson, you will learn to recognize attributes and shapes by comparing them. Take a look at these shapes. Which of these shapes are quadrilaterals?
All right, which are quadrilaterals? I'll try and move my little recording guy out of the way. Which ones are quadrilaterals? Ashton, what's one quadrilateral you see? The square. We have this green square. It might be helpful if you tell me a color so I know what shape we're talking about. That is a quadrilateral. Any other quadrilaterals? William? The dark blue one right here. It's not a shape we have learned because it does not have any parallel sides. These sides will eventually touch, and my top and bottom will eventually touch. So the best name for this shape is just quadrilateral so far. Any other quadrilaterals? Lily Marie? This one? We have learned the name of this shape. It is a quadrilateral, but there is a better name for it. Aiden, do you know? This is a trapezoid. It has one pair of parallel sides. Very good.
When you're searching for a quadrilateral, you must first know that quadrilaterals have 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's sort these shapes into 2 categories. Shapes that are quadrilaterals and shapes that are not quadrilaterals. Which of these shapes on the left have 4 sides and can stay? This one. Which of these shapes on the right have 4 sides and need to move to the left? These 2. So let's put these shapes in their correct places. Now let's draw a line down the center. All of the shapes on the left are quadrilaterals. All of the shapes on the right are not. Take a look at these shapes. What do all of these shapes have in common? All of these shapes have at least one pair of parallel sides as an attribute. That means they have at least one pair of sides that are opposite from each other, that run in the same direction and are the same distance apart from each other. How do I know if a shape has parallel sides?
All right, I want you to do a subtitle of parallel sides. They're going to show you another way, and I kind of showed you a little bit on Monday's video of how to look at parallel sides, but I think this is another good way to look at it if you have a hard time imagining lines. So go ahead and make a subtitle, Parallel Sides.
From each other, like this top side and bottom side. If I were to measure the distance between each of those sides with a ruler or with a piece of paper, no matter where I put the paper or the ruler, the 2 sides would always be the same distance apart. Here's my slip of paper. I will mark the distance between my 2 opposite sides here and here. No matter where I move my paper, the distance apart stays the same. These opposite sides are the same distance apart.
All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to write what she's got in her speech bubble. The opposite sides are the same distance apart. And we just kind of talked about that when we were doing parallel sides with our arms. The distance between my elbows are the same distance between my fingers.
Here's my slip of paper again. I will mark the distance here and here. If I move my paper, I will notice that my line does not match, so they are not the same distance apart. That means these opposite sides are not parallel. Let's sort these shapes into 2 categories. Shapes with at least one pair of parallel sides and shapes with no parallel sides. Shapes on the left.
All right, which shapes have one set of parallel sides? One or more, 1 plus. Which of these shapes have at least one or more set of parallel sides? Kylie, what's one? Yeah, this blue rectangle. How many sets of parallel sides does it have? 2. Top and bottom are parallel, and side are parallel. Any other ones? Any other ones, Lainey?
The square shape.
This one right here?
Yeah.
It's not quite a square. We can just call it a quadrilateral for right now. But yes, our top and bottom are parallel, and our sides are parallel. Any others?
Yeah.
Mason?
The dark blue one.
This one?
Yep.
Which sides are parallel?
The two side ones.
The side ones? Maybe. This one looks like it's going to go straight, and this one looks a little bit more angled. I'm not sure that one's going to be parallel. I'm not sure those are going to be parallel. Lily Marie, is there one? This one? This one? Which sides are parallel? The left and right? Yeah, those look to be parallel. Good eye. Lily?
The light green one.
Yeah, we know this shape. Here, I'll move my recorder box. What is this shape right here? A trapezoid. Which sides are parallel?
The top and bottom.
The top and the bottom are parallel. Very good.
Have at least one pair of parallel sides. These two. Which of these shapes of the right have at least one pair of parallel sides? Only this one does. So let's put these shapes in their correct places. Draw a line down the center. All of the shapes on the left have at least one pair of parallel sides, while the shapes on the right do not.
So,
take a look at these shapes.
I know we said maybe this orange one might, but I guess it does not. It might just be angled farther. Okay? It's okay.
Now, take a look at these shapes. What do all of these shapes have in common? We already know that all of these shapes have parallel sides, but all of these shapes also have squared corners as an attribute. That means I can put an envelope or a sheet of paper inside of each corner and it will fit perfectly.
We've talked a little bit about square corners.
Take a look at this rectangle. I can get a sheet of paper or an envelope and place it in the inside of a corner and it will fit perfectly. How do I know if a shape does not have square corners? Let me check these corners. I'll place an envelope in this bottom left corner. The envelope does not fit perfectly. The space inside of this shape's corner is bigger or greater than the space inside a square corner. I will place a sheet of paper in this top right corner. It too does not fit perfectly. The space inside of the shape's corner is smaller or less than the space inside the square corner. I know this because the shape's right side is hidden beneath the paper, and even if I slide my paper over to the left, the side is still hidden. Let's sort these shapes into two categories.
Right, we're not going to worry so much about square corners, but I wanted to touch on that again. Go ahead and draw a line in your notebook. We've kind of reviewed parallelograms. We've reviewed some common attributes. And now we're going to talk about rectangles. Alright, attributes of a rectangle. Just like any other shape, sit up, Hunter. We know that a rectangle has to be a polygon. You can't have a rectangle with holes. You can't have a rectangle with wiggly sides. We also know that a rectangle has to have 4 sides and 4 angles. You can't have a rectangle without those. So a rectangle is also a quadrilateral. just learned about parallel sides. Does a rectangle have any parallel sides? Yes. How many pairs? Riley, how many pairs? 2 pairs. 2 sets. Hey, this looks really familiar. Did you just write that?
Yes.
So mess with whatever you mess with. You did just write that. Where did you write that down? Thomas? So, does that mean that a rectangle is also a parallelogram?
Yes.
Yes. So another name for a rectangle is a parallelogram. Now this is where it gets tricky. This is where it gets tricky. Because some parallelograms will look like this. That is a parallelogram. It has no holes, straight sides, and 2 sets of parallel sides. Is that shape also a rectangle? You know what a rectangle looks like. Is that a rectangle?
No.
So not all parallelograms are rectangles. This is really tricky. Not all parallelograms but every single rectangle I can draw is a parallelogram. So if I draw a rectangle, that shape, also a parallelogram. Also a parallelogram. But all rectangles are parallelograms. It's very tricky. A parallelogram can be a rectangle, but it can be this other weird shape. But every rectangle also has the name parallelogram. This is not the only rules of a rectangle. There's one more very important rule. Think about a rectangle. I'm missing one important rule. And you can tell by looking at the shape that I crossed out and then looking at the shapes that are rectangles. There's one important rule. Lainey, do you know what it is?
It has to have straight sides.
My other ones have straight sides-ish. They're just diagonal. Diagonal is still straight. Riley, do you know?
It has 2 of the same size and 2 different sides that they have the same size.
So does my parallelogram. 2 sets of the same length and 2 sets of the same length. So that's not it. Billy?
Not all of the sides can be the same length.
Well, not all the sides on my parallelogram are the same length. Ada, do you know?
Square corners?
Yes! How many square corners do you think a rectangle has to have?
4.
A rectangle must have 4 square corners. The length of the sides do not matter. The length of the sides do not matter. You should be writing. A rectangle can have really long sides, really short sides. They can all be the same size. Doesn't matter. Those are the only rules of a rectangle. Yes?
I can do it, but square is like the same rules, but it's not called a rectangle. Right?
It is called a rectangle.
Is it just the squish rectangle?
Nope, it's a regular sized rectangle. So Kylie asked me a good question. She said, well, a square has those rules, but it has all the same sides, but we call it a square, not a rectangle. A square is its best name. But can I call a square a polygon?
No.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Can I call it a quadrilateral?
Yes.
Can I call it a rectangle?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I can. Because it follows all those same rules. It's not its best name, and most people don't call it that. Just like most people don't call you, hey, third grader. They call you by your best name. They call you Kylie.
But if they don't know you, you know all the same.
But that's not wrong. Very true. Very true. All right, next blank page. Next blank page. Now we're getting into that overlap. Talking about best names. And you might see this question a lot. It's talking about which attributes or what attributes do rectangles and parallelograms share. When we're talking about things sharing, we're talking about what do they both have. Something that they share. Both rectangles and parallelograms have this attribute. Gia, what's one? So what's the name? What's that fancy math language we use for four sides? Okay, well conveniently you have a math notebook which should be out on your table. A quadrilateral. Both rectangles and parallelograms are quadrilaterals. They share that. What else do we share? Sit up, get out your math notebook, and please be writing. It's January, Gio. I shouldn't have to tell you how to act in a math class. Hayden? They both have two sets of parallel sides. They do. Anything else that they both share? They both have? Ashlyn? Yeah, they're both polygons. And Ashlyn, you brought this up earlier. Really, the only difference is that our rectangles have to have square corners, where our parallelograms don't have to. A parallelogram can. There's no rule saying they can't have square corners, but they don't have to. Okay? Alright, we're going to do a little work with some geoboards. Yeah. If you have never used a geoboard, if you have never used a geoboard, what it is it's a square or rectangular board with pegs poking up. And then we have rubber bands that we will use and hook onto the pegs to make lines and then eventually to make shapes. Okay? I want to go over my expectations now because you get one shot. On the other side of the geoboard there is a circular one because you can do shapes. I mean you can do measurements and angles and all kinds of stuff with circles. We are not focusing on circles. Why? And you wonder. So we are not going to mess with that side. I will tell you, you are going to want to hold on to that center peg and spin your geoboard. Yes. I know you want to. Don't do it. Because as soon as I see that geoboard spinning, it's mine. Are we clear? Yeah, but you're no longer getting to use it at all. Forever? For at least today. Okay? Rubber bands, I have had for a very long time. They will likely break. It's gonna be okay. If they break, just put them in a pile, and at the end we will throw the broken ones away. There's no need to be stressing about a broken rubber band. It'll happen, and it'll be fine. Please try not to break them. Please take care so that we can keep them whole. But if they break, all is going to be fine. Okay? All right. Make sure you have these notes down, and then we will get started with some geoboards.